we love to do because it represents so much of what our life is with Jesus. Transformation, beauty, colour. This is the life that he comes and brings. And the fact that it's come from your gardens, where you have hopefully had rain at your place, this is representing also our homes and our hearts. And I just would invite you to just take some photos of that during this time. And at the end of today, we're going to take a piece of this new creation home with us. And it will come from someone else's garden. So while you're kind of drifting off while I'm talking and sounding like Mr. Bean, right? You know, the whole la 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 la. I know what it's like on Sundays. While that's happening, maybe you can pick what you would like to choose, because at the end of today, we're going to be walking past here and you can choose one of those things from the cross to take home. So God is still doing things in this world right now. He loves you, he's good, and he is for you and always with you. So whether this is your first Easter celebrating with us, or whether this is an Easter that you have been joining us for years and years, there is new life for you today. And we look forward now to hearing the text that we're going to be reading from. And Rob Carter's going to read that for us from John 20. It's going to be on the screen so you can follow along.
Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying.
Have you ever been in a moment where it didn't turn out quite the way you thought it would? I would say the last 5 years that we have all globally experienced a pandemic has been a moment that we kind of didn't expect, and didn't think that it would turn out the way it was. And so today we're going to look at some questions around the resurrection. We're going to look at some questions that come to us personally. We're going to look at some questions that came to Mary, and we're going to say, these are the kind of questions that Jesus is actually asking us as well today, because the crux of our faith in Jesus rests in this day, rests in the fact that everything we stand for, everything we believe, everything we live for in Jesus rests in the day of resurrection, right? Right? Yeah. And so every thought that we have, when questions are asked of us, everything about life and death and our future, money, all sorts of those questions that we have can be placed in Jesus and the new creation that he brought to us and to our life. And the questions that we have can define our lives, your life, depending on how you answer it. And it will shape who you are as a person. So Resurrection Sunday, when he rose again, you know, before the death of Jesus, he was really up front with those people that were traveling with him and with the crowds. He was really up front saying he was going to die and rise again. He did not hide that fact that he was going to rise again. And he is rising again. But, you know, often in history, we think the people that were walking with him at that time, they thought he was going to be dead, and that was the end of the story, right? And that's the way that we also think that when someone dies, we think they're going to stay dead. But Jesus, he was fully alive. He was a carpenter. He was fully alive walking this earth. And then at another point, he was fully dead. How many of you watched the Princess Bride movie? Sorry, it just went through my mind. Mostly dead, or is he all dead? Is he a little bit dead, or he was all dead? All right? And so on the third day, this all dead, fully dead Jesus, something happened. And he rose again. He got up again. No, I'm not going to go there either. He got up again, and he now stands as the anchor of our faith, inviting us into the new creation. It's our claim of Christianity, of following Jesus, that he is risen, and we celebrate it today. And you are here to celebrate that with us today because we believe it's the crux of our faith. So early in the morning, we see in that scripture there that the first day of the week, and again, John is giving us all these clues as he writes the revelation of what happened on this day. Early on the first day, so he's referencing right back to creation in Genesis, where the first day of creation, we're doing it again, creation 2.0. It's coming and being reset again. God created the world, and then he sent Jesus, and he's now recreating and restoring all to the Father. And not only was it the first day of the week, John tells us, he tells us it was still dark. So here we have a follower of Jesus, Mary, who is there, probably not knowing that area very well, but she is so committed, so seriously committed to her Jesus, that she was there walking in the dark to find him and his body. And she arrives to find a series of questions. She arrives, and we're going to see as we look at verse 11 on the screen, that Mary sees that she thinks somebody took the body. Now remember, Jesus was pretty controversial in those days, so it was right for her mind to go there and to say, he was pretty controversial, someone's probably done this. They've desecrated the tomb and they've taken his body. Let's read verse 11 on the screen. Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, and one at the head and the other at the foot. And then they asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" First question today. Why are you crying? In our culture, it could be a little bit like, are you okay? Why are you crying? What a strange question. From angels of all. Why are you crying? What's got you so upset? But in a sense, they're asking another question, which we're going to hear as we move along. And her answer was, well, they've taken my Lord away. They've taken my Lord away. I don't know where to find him and where they put him. So she's upset. She doesn't know what's happened. She doesn't know where he is. Remember, we're talking about a fully dead person is what she's thinking. And she's broken because she got there in the dark because she wanted to help honor her friend and her Lord and her Savior. And she was not able to do that, so she's crying. Why are you crying? Mary's not the first person of you in this room who would have been at a graveside crying. Mary's not the first person at a graveside to cry. There's a number of us, I'm sure, in this room this Easter. Unlike any Easter, it might be not what you thought it was going to be. Maybe you've lost someone during this year. Maybe you've experienced grief this year. And so that question, why are you crying, is a good question for us. Why are you crying? There could be any number of us who this holiday feels different this year. This holiday is not the same as it's been other years because we've experienced loss. Maybe that's you today. And so this is a moment where we remember that sadly, for all of us, we're going to experience loss, just as Jesus prepared us and was acquainted with grief. We watch how he did it, and he walked with obedience to the loving Father. And we see that these layers of sorrow that we've experienced, even over the last 5 years with COVID, I know that there are some of us that have lost jobs and never had that restored. Some of us have lost health and challenges with our mobility and with our health that has actually created activity that's not normal for us. Some of us have lost relationships in our family just because of what we've gone through with polarized conversations. The pressure and the loss and the change that we walk through daily is real for us as humans, but today we say that at Easter, the resurrection comes to us in places of sorrow. The resurrection and new life comes to us in places of grief. So we have to be able to acknowledge our sorrow on this day. We have to also be able to honestly assess, is there any sorrow and pain that needs to come to Jesus today? Because he understands every place of sorrow. There's so many places for me that I've thought, I thought this was going to happen and it didn't. It happened differently. And I wonder if some of us are sitting here going, I thought my marriage turned out a little bit differently than I thought it was going to be. Or maybe you're a parent thinking, being a parent's not quite going the way that I thought it should. Maybe you are saying, this whole relationship that I have with money, that's kind of not being exactly like I thought it would go either. There are things that don't work in our life. Do you agree? Turns out different than we think. And we are in good company, because before we get all super happy right today, I want to say right now and acknowledge in this room right now, for many of us, we need also just to say there's a real sorrow and a loss that we have journeyed towards as we follow Jesus. And it takes real courage to be able to acknowledge those places of grief in us. It takes real courage to say, this is where I'm going to find the opportunity of hope. Next slide. The Italian Job. Who's seen this movie? Yeah, a couple of you. It's a good movie. If you haven't seen that and you've got some time that you'd like to, it's a great movie. One guy comes up and he says, I feel so optimistic. And the other guy, he says, how do you feel? And the guy he's talking to says, I feel fine. And he says, we all know what fine means. It means freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I'm fine. What a non-committal answer, right? I'm fine, but actually means that you are freaked out, that you are insecure, you are neurotic, and you are emotional. How many of you would use those words when I say, how do you feel today? We can be real and say how we are feeling, because when we have a question that comes on Resurrection Day saying, why are you crying? You don't have to say, I'm fine. Can you imagine Mary saying, why are you crying? I'm fine. Nobody has walked through the last 5 years, particularly, where every day we're feeling fine. There've been every part of those freaked out, insecure, neurotic moments that we've all experienced. So why are you crying is our first question. Let's continue on verse 14. She turned around and saw Jesus standing there, and she did not realize it was Jesus. Now, there could be a number of reasons, right, why she saw a gardener and not Jesus. A, she wasn't expecting to see Jesus because he's dead. So that would be possibly one of the really good reasons, and psychologists have a lot to say about this, that when we're in grief, sometimes we can see things with our eyes and our mind won't allow us to see it, because of the way that we are functioning under grief. So that could be a possibility for her. Or it could be that his resurrection body was so different that she didn't recognize him because it was a new body that he was wearing. It was a new body that he was living in. It was a new body that he walked towards her with. Now, we know it was different because a few verses later, John tells us that all the disciples had run home and they were in the upper room praying, and Jesus came to see them and he walked through the wall, not the door. Remember that? Jesus walked through the wall, not the door. His resurrected body had new dynamics that was going on. So it's possible that Mary did not understand what was going on when she saw Jesus and thought he was something else or someone else. Good news is we are going to have resurrection bodies. You're going to be able to walk through walls. Oh my gosh, who's excited about that? Oh my gosh. So, yes, happy thought. What did you learn at church? I'm going to walk through walls after death. This is so cool. It's another weird thought that I just want to drop there because I think that we won't be recognized either. That we will be so like him and our true selves will be unrecognizable and you will be able to walk through walls. Next slide. Verse 15, he asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" And then she said, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him and I will get him." On the next question, we see that she's being asked, who is it that you are looking for? You have sorrow, you have confusion, you have pain, Mary. Who is it you're looking for? The question for us today, who is it you are looking for here today? Mary's devotion was rock solid, right? All she could think about was going to help her friend, her Lord, her King. And it was pretty remarkable because if you think a average-sized woman was probably, 65, 70 kilos perhaps at that time, and she weighed that much. She was going to treat her body with herbs and spices and to anoint his body, which probably would have been maybe, 90 kilos, 80 kilos? We don't know. But we also know that the text tells us that Nicodemus and Joseph had also wrapped him in soaked herbs and linen, and so that would have been really heavy as well, so possibly 100 kilos total that she was going to anoint and lift. She went with intentions. She was going to do that, and her devotion was practical and real. And so you just think that literally when she's being asked, who are you looking for, the question probably was more like, who's going to provide you hope in this situation? Who's going to care for your sorrow? Rather than who are you looking for, her sorrow and pain was actually there as the first thing that she heard this question, who are you looking for? So this sorrow and pain that she would have been feeling, we can identify even in COVID, right, where we were in lockdown. And I'm going back to that because it's probably the most traumatic thing that we've experienced as a people in the last 5 years. And Australians began to go and look for answers in different places. Alcohol. We began to have a different relationship with alcohol. People at home in lockdown in our city, the spiked to the number of people that were buying alcohol and drinking at home alone. What's it like then for those people to return? The world opens up again and they return and they've got something else that they're carrying with them. Not only pain, but they also have the need to drink while they're at work. How do we manage that? That people need to now go and drink while they're working because of what happened in sorrow and pain. Saying people that love statistics, people that love to look at how things have changed, tell us the same thing happened with porn. That people were now addicted to things that they weren't before COVID because of the pain. And it's all about medicating and numbing and distracting ourselves from our sorrow. And the point of that is not to say, oh, woe is me, but 2 weeks ago, a number of us went into a masterclass to learn to get some tools about how we manage reactivity and anxiety right now that wasn't there in the same way. And this guy that was speaking is a hospital chaplain and he's also a pastor. So he had a lot of tools that he was sharing. His name is the best name, Steve Cuss. C-U-S-S, Cuss. Say that. Cuss. Oh, you just cussed in church. No. So Steve Cuss has a website called Cuss Words. If you need some tools, go there, and there's some practical ways to manage and to find hope in our anxiety and in our reactivity that's been a part of our response to pain. But today, I'm not going there. Today, I'm saying Jesus is saying he's the resurrection and the life. Jesus is the one who you are to seek. And so we have this picture of an empty tomb. We have this picture of an alive and present Jesus. He was absent and now he's present. Often you hear us talk about the presence of the Lord. He was absent, but we believe now he's present. And today he is present. He is fully alive and with us. Let me put some words to this that is a bit practical, and it comes from a book that I have just been reading little bits of, because when you read, you read a book and you have to kind of stop and just let it soak in. This is one of those writers, Anne Lamott. If you haven't read her, she's just a very incredible, thoughtful writer, and she's written about grace, eventually. And so she talks about how she came to understand and learn that Jesus was real. And she talks about how coming to Jesus and accepting the life that has been offered in him, that it wasn't a big one moment. It was actually a gradual experience of a series of moments. And that through her pain, it forced her to contend with herself. And she was managing it, and she was numbing it, as you will hear, and yet she bumped into Jesus while she was in that moment of pain and those series of moments of pain. And her words describe it best. So I'm going to read a bit that describes what it was like for her. She's like Mary. She didn't realize this was Jesus with her. So we're going to have that on the screen. And I'm just going to take a drink. Birthday excitement. Grace eventually. So this part that she's writing, starting on slide 1, it was the 7th night after she'd had a very major pain and loss. She'd had an abortion. And during that time, she was numbing it with alcohol. So you'll see that as we read about that. And she'd just gotten so drunk the night before, she actually needed to go to the hospital because she was unwell. But she did not, through her shame and her guilt, she did not want to ring anyone. So she didn't ring anyone, and this is what happened. After a while, as I lay there, I became aware of someone with me, hunkered down in the corner. The feeling was so strong that I actually turned on the light for a moment to make sure no one was there. Of course, there wasn't. But after a while, in the dark again, I knew beyond any doubt that it was Jesus. I felt him as surely as I feel my dog lying nearby as I write this. As was appalled, she writes, I thought that my life and my brilliant, hilarious, progressive friends, what were they going to think of this? I thought about what everyone would think of me if I became a Christian. And it seemed an utterly impossible thing that simply could not be allowed to happen. So I turned to the wall and I said out loud, I would rather die. I felt him just sitting there, watching me with patience and love. And I squeezed my eyes shut. But that didn't help because it wasn't my eyes that was seeing him. Finally, I fell asleep, and in the morning, he was gone. This experience spooked me badly. But then, everywhere I went, I had a feeling that a little cat was following me, wanting me to reach down, pick it up, and wanting me to open the door and let it in. But I knew what would happen. You let a cat in one time, you give it a little milk, and then it stays forever. 1 week later, I went to church. I was so hungover. And this time I stayed for the sermon, which I thought was so ridiculous, like someone trying to convince me of the existence of extraterrestrials. And this last song, though, was so deep and so raw and pure that I could not escape. I felt like something was holding me like a scared kid, and I opened up to that feeling and it washed over me and I began to cry. I raced home and felt the little cat running at my heels, opened the door of my house, and I stood there for 1 long minute. I hung my head and said, I quit. I took a long, deep breath and said out loud, all right, you can come in. I find that most people I speak to, this beautifully described experience is quite common to people that find that they bump into Jesus. There's any number of us in this room that could relate to that, and there's also probably some of us that are going, I haven't let him in. I don't know what that would look like for me. But I could say that because I've had so many conversations with many people about how they have found Jesus, his reality, many of them have found that it could be true of you as well, that there have been moments in the dark, moments when no one else is around, that you actually realize God is near. But you may not have language for it or understanding for that. And I'm here to tell you today that his name is Jesus. He is here, he is with us, and he is alive, and he's with you. And he made a way for you through his death and through his resurrection. And he didn't go through all of that just so that I could call him the big man upstairs. He didn't go through all that just so that I could say there's a higher power in my life. He didn't go through all that just to say there's a force in the universe that I recognize. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. And so Tim Keller, another wonderful preacher that can say things so much better than I could, says this: if you are looking at Christianity, if you are looking, start looking for Jesus and his life as it's shown to us in the Gospels, in the Bible. Especially look at the resurrection. If you are looking into Christianity, don't begin, as most modern people do, by asking yourself, if Christianity fits who you are, I'll take it on board. If the resurrection happens, then there is a God who created for you a relationship, and he created you for himself. He created you for himself. And ultimately that means that Christianity fits, whether you can see it now or not. If you speak to Jesus, if you let Jesus know that you are ready to let him in, then what you will know is that you don't have to know it all before that happens. Right now, where you are, you don't have to know more than what you know today. You just need to open the door and say, I'll let you in. I quit. I give up doing my way. And it begins then to unlock this change in your life that is unbelievably beautiful, loving, and eternal. And he begins to interact with you for real. And he also does exactly what he did with Mary, which we'll see in verse 16. He said, Mary. And she melted. He said, Mary, and whatever it was, whether it was the intonation of his voice that she recognized, or the power of the Spirit of God upon him at that time, whatever it was, melted, and she went out to grab him and said, no, not yet. Don't take hold of me. And so today, as we come to land, my biggest prayer for you today, for each of you, if it hasn't happened yet, or if it happens and you need a reminder, someone would want you to know Jesus is looking at you. He is saying your name. Maz, Graham, He's saying your name. Are you melting as he says your name? Are you hearing as he says your name? This is where it gets tricky. Because as we've heard from Anne Lamott, that he will not force his way into your life. You have to choose to take hold of him like Mary did. You have to choose to open the door. You have to choose to say, yes, this is what I want to live with you in my life, Jesus. He will not force his way in. And so as we say yes, we receive life, we receive the beauty, we receive cleansing, and we throw off all the other ways that we've tried to numb our life and find our life. We throw off all those things to manage our pain, and he comes and meets with us. It's not enough for us just to say, I believe. It's actually not enough for us just to be a good person. Mary was going with a commitment to do good things, but she was looking to find Jesus and to take hold of him. So the last question for today is, have you taken hold of Jesus? Are you clinging to him? And this is relevant for all of us, even the birthday girl. This is relevant because there's a sense that if you've said yes to Jesus and you followed Jesus in the past, and then the truth will be that he has come right into your heart and into your life, and the reality is then we have to lay down those things that we're trying to manage. We have to give those over and turn them over and turn to him. So this Easter, I'm just simply saying, receive and cling and take hold of all that is offered in Jesus. It's the only way to hope, it's the only way through, and it's the only way that overcomes death so that we will have those resurrected bodies and live with him forever. So some of you might be going, actually, this is my day. This could be my day. This could be the day that I say yes to Jesus for the very first time, or it could be the day that we're saying yes to Jesus as part of our recommitment to him. And we lay aside those things that we've done every time and it hasn't kind of worked out for us. So if that's for you today, I just say he's real and he's here ready to meet with you. And if that's something like Mary where you're standing there and you're hearing him say your name, I just say melt into that. Listen for that. Receive the love that he has for you. And the end of our passage today has Mary going to find the other disciples with the news, I have seen the Lord. I have seen the Lord. If you do today for your first time or for many, many times over, if you've seen the Lord, tell others about what you've seen of his beauty and his life that's with us. I have seen the Lord is my prayer for you today. The first person in history to be resurrected, not rescued from death, not translated from a caterpillar into a butterfly, who was resurrected and is living now with us, has walked through death, has victory over death. We're in new creation right now. He is with us today. And so my question is for us, what mess are we living in that we need to step out of our own making and allow Jesus to come into? Because new creation and his love is available today. What plan are we trying to work out that's not working? Come and get prayer today because he wants to step into that situation with you. What victory do you need? What breakthrough do you need? Today is the day of all days. Not because it's my birthday, but because it's Resurrection Sunday. So how we are going to end today is expect that he is going to actually meet with us in ways that will be very unique for each of you. And in 2 weeks' time, we have baptisms available for those that would want to, whether it's your first time or whether you've never actually been baptized. This is the day we want to celebrate new life with you. And so we have today a place where we're just going to hear what God has been saying, what he's doing amongst us right now, and Harry's going to come and help me with that. And after we hear that there's some specific things that he's saying, Harry's going to help us to see there's a ministry team that will come and pray for you. We would love to pray for you. I'm then going to pray a blessing over all of us as our finish and invite you at the end of that to walk all the way around here while we have some worship on and to come to the cross, the new creation cross, and to lay down things that you want to lay down and to find a piece of new creation for today. Sound good? Good. So I know sometimes we get a little bit stuck about movement, so I'm going to pray a blessing so then you can be receiving all that you would need to have for this week, but also receiving prayer, which we'd love to do today, as Harry said. So let me just pray a blessing. If you'd like to just hold your hands out, ministry team as well. May this Easter day bring resurrection life to your heart, to your home. May this Easter day bring renewal that radiates within you, revival that emanates through you. May the dawn that displaces darkness be true for you today, and may the spring that replaces winter be ever true for you. May the God of hope fill you with joy and peace this Easter, and may you overflow with hope and the power of his life forevermore. And all the people said, Amen. Amen.